Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Today is October 10th, and our webcast will be Building an Inspection Program with IBM Maximo. Today we're going to discuss how to improve your performance with inspections. It should be a great session. Just a couple of quick housekeeping issues before we get started. Everyone will be in listen-only mode. If you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. Just type it into the chat box and we'll get to as many questions as we can. The webinar will last about an hour, and that includes plenty of time for question and answers at the end. And before you ask, yes, we will send you a copy of the presentation after the session. My name is Alex Duggan, and I'll be your MC today. I'm Senior Project Manager with LMI 360, a sales and marketing organization focused on service and technology providers that support the commercial built environment. Joining us as our presenter is Amy Tatum, Vice President of Starboard Consulting. Amy has over 25 years of experience as an engineer and technology consultant and has managed the implementation of countless Maximo projects. Our other presenter today is Starboard IBM Maximo consultant, Lonnie Trotter. Lonnie is a highly regarded and experienced project manager with broad experience in Maximo, IoT, asset management, and business process implementations, just to name a few. So we are thrilled to have them both. At this time, let's turn it over to Amy, who is live from a client site. Amy, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Alex. So again, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We hope to give you some good information about managing your inspections in Maximo. As Alex said, we are live from a client site, so have incorporated this webinar into our training sessions for today. So I've got a room full of people here that we're presenting to as well. Just a quick background on Starboard Consulting. We are a Maximo implementer and business partner of IBM. Starboard hasn't been around for 20 years, but many of us in the company have been working with Maximo since way back in version 3.02. We're a premier business partner and gold certified. We're also a reseller and support partner. So we are experts in all things Maximo, offering full service capabilities around assessments, upgrades, implementations, training, support, integrations, you name it. If Maximo is part of it, then we are here to help. So before we get started, we just had a quick question, I think, Alex, that you wanted to send out to the group as a poll.
Yes, as we get started, we just want to hear from you. What version of Maximo are you using currently? Are you on 7.4? Are you already on 7.6.1 plus? Just wanted to get a sense of where everyone is, if you can take a minute to share your results with us. Appreciate that. We see some results coming in. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate everyone sharing. Amy, back to you. Looks like a mix.
So, yeah, it looks like a mix, but about half of you are on version 7.6, which is great because the inspections that we're going to show you didn't become available until 7.6, and they have continued to be improved over time as IBM invests in this technology. So what we're going to go through today as an agenda, first we'll just introduce the inspection applications. And do you guys still see the screen? We kind of had a fail here on our end, so I just want to confirm, Alex, are we still good?
If you're still seeing it, just X out of it. It should have gone away, but if you're seeing it, just X out.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, just hit the X there. Oh, okay, thank you. All right, so we'll do a quick introduction of just inspections as a whole and what that entails, and then we're going to do a live demo of conducting a couple of different types of inspections so you can see those in action. Then we'll talk a little bit about how you build these forms and can configure them to the specific needs of your business cases, and talk about the roadmap of where things are going from here. So introducing inspections. An inspection is really any time you're checking or testing against established standards, you're looking at something You're examining an asset, a series of assets. Other names for inspections, some people might call them assessments, might call them audits, surveys. They generally come traditionally with some sort of paper form with lots of checkboxes and lines and things that you would be filling in with data that you're collecting about whatever it is that you're inspecting. What IBM has done then is introduced inspection capability with the work centers. So the work center features give you the ability to basically take those inspection forms and make them electronic. So anything that I had traditionally in a paper-based form, I can put into an electronic form. I've got capabilities to use audio-guided inspections, create follow-up actions. I can search and evaluate my inspection results, so where those paper forms might have ultimately ended up in a filing cabinet, not to be looked at again, or when that audit came along, it was a tedious and manual process of going through the pieces of paper to mine that information. By getting these into an electronic format, you've got the ability to analyze that data in a historic fashion and maybe do some trending and reporting off of it. Other features of the inspection work centers, you can do either unplanned or ad hoc inspections. You can associate those inspection forms to PMs, to job plans, to assets and locations. So if they're recurring types of activities, you can manage that. You can do batch actions as follow-up. So if inspections come in with some sort of unsatisfactory type of result, you can use that to generate follow-on work orders, much like you might have done with condition monitoring in the past. And then inspections are also status, so you can keep track of what's pending, what's in progress, and what's already been done. So that's just a quick background on the inspection capabilities, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lonnie, and she's going to do our first demo of a live inspection in our demo environment. This is a 761 Maximo that we run internally at Starboard as our sandbox and demo environment. So she's going to share that and show you how we might make use of it.
Hello, this is Lonnie Trotter. So today we wanted to demonstrate in a live session of Maximo how we could perform a fire extinguisher inspection. So a simple process that is commonly used in many organizations to make the rounds and assure that the extinguishers are inspected on time. So starting in the asset module, just as an example, this is one jumping off point to create an inspection. I have asked Maximo using create an unscheduled inspection. It's right here on my menu. And when I create that, I can tell it that my inspection form, and that's my fire extinguisher inspection, and I can say OK. So this is just one way that the inspection form can be started. And then in the work center itself, the inspection is there waiting for me in a pending state, and I can just, as an inspector now, go to my pending queue and find the inspection that I need to take. So here I can select this inspection, and it's confirming to me that I am currently inspecting asset number 1005 out of the Maximo system, and it asks me to go ahead and start the inspection. So when I start the inspection, I'm presented with an electronic form that Amy recently just explained to you that how the work centers are constructed with these forms. I have on the left-hand side a list of the question types, or the questions I'll be answering, and then my responses are on the right-hand side. Basically, the very first section says charge pressure, and I have an asterisk, the good friendly asterisk in Maximo, that tells me that is a required answer. I must answer this question, or will not be able to complete the inspection. So I'm looking at my asset, and my pressure gauge is in the green area, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that. I scroll down to my second question, and what is the condition of the mount? So if the mount is secure, loose, or not mounted, and I'm just selecting them like you would with any other selection, but you can imagine these if you had a mobile device, the touch screen would be very simple to just select the answer to your question. Next question is condition of the shell. I'm going to go ahead and give it a good rating. And then notice that I have a follow-up question that describe any detail, any rating except good. So you can see that there's instructions on the screen for me how to answer these questions. Is the locking pin in place and secure? And then I need to check the stamp or sticker that shows the date of the last hydrostatic test. And I'm going to show that it was done back in August. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass the fire extinguisher inspection. And if this was a fail, it's giving me an instruction that says if it has failed, enter in detail the reason. Another function within this inspection form is the ability to upload any kind of attachments. So I do have the ability to enter let's say a photo of the extinguisher that I just inspected. And I can put a purpose of the photo. And once I've finished the inspection, I just have a double check on the left-hand side. I can see that I've answered 3 out of the 4 questions, and my condition section is missing something. So I can go back to my condition section and notice that the reason it didn't show complete was because I didn't do any kind of detail here. So I just want to double check that I've answered every question satisfactorily, and then I can complete the inspection. So the feedback here at the end of the inspection is that I have completed the fire extinguisher inspection on this date by Wilson was the inspector, and I can exit the inspection.
All right, thanks, Lonnie. So that's one example of a fairly straightforward inspection that's unscheduled on a single asset. The next one that we're going to do is going to be a little bit more complex, and this is going to be the scenario where I have gone out into the field, and my example is going to be a substation inspection. So when I go out to the substation, within that fence line, I've got a lot of different assets of varying types. I've got transformers and breakers and switches and things that aren't all going to inspect out the same way. I'm going to collect different pieces of information on each of those. So in this case, I want a little bit different look at my inspection form. So I'm going to come in here and just create a quick work order to do this inspection. Now again, normally this is something that would have come about through my PM program, where this would be generated automatically for me. I wouldn't be creating this manually, but I'm going to go ahead and just do this as a manual inspection real quick. So I'm applying a substation route to this work order. So what that's going to do for me is down here in my multi-asset table window, I've got several different assets that I'm going to inspect as part of the substation effort. 2 of them are breakers, so I have an inspection form associated to breakers. And then over here I have a different inspection form that's related to my transformer. So if I were back here in my inspection view, I'll see now here when I refresh this that I've got a new set of inspections that have come in since I've created that work order. Now what this is going to allow me to do is inspect those as a batch. So here where I've got three 3 assets where Lonnie just did a single asset at a time. I'm going to do these all at once. So I'm going to take my iPad out. I'm just going to walk around the substation yard looking at each piece of equipment and recording the information that I need to gather on each one of those. So as this form comes up, I can see here now I've got an inspection set of inspection forms that are over here, and there's a little bit of a lag, I think, maybe in what we're seeing, so hopefully I won't get too far ahead of everybody. But when I click on this inspection form, now I see that I've got a breaker inspection and I've got 2 different assets listed, and then I've got a transformer inspection, which is yet a 3rd asset. So again, different inspections, different questions, different asset classes, but all grouped together, and then my button down here says each of those assets and each of those different types of questions that I need to answer about those assets. Now, the order of this can be set based on the order of your route, so if you normally do that in a particular sequence, you can account for that. Otherwise, I could just jump from one to the other. If I come up to the asset, I can just go to that one in the list and see that. So in this case, we're going to say that my first breaker here is satisfactory, and the trip counter on it is maybe 65. And I'm not collecting a lot of data here just to kind of keep this quick. Now if I look down at my bushings, maybe one of them is cracked. And if I look down at this other breaker, I've got an unsatisfactory rating on that. And then I've got whatever its trip counter is. And again, maybe a cracked bushing. So I'm just going to go through this and answer these questions. If I have some questions about the asset itself, I've got a little information icon up here that I can click on, and that's just going to bring me up a little bit more detail about the specific asset that I'm looking at, so I can see that this transformer is a 20 MVA, 138 to 13.2 kV, and I'm doing this as part of my substation inspection. So I put in my tap position, my lower limits here, my upper limit. And again, if you're doing this on a mobile device, it's just a very simple click through with your, most likely your finger, where you're just selecting these options and moving on to the next one. Once I get to the end here, if I have maybe I did an infrared scan or I've got something else, I can add that attachment, much like Lonnie saw, to pull in that picture of whatever it is that I might be looking at. And I'm just going to randomly grab one because I forgot to send Lonnie my infrared picture that I had planned to use for this. So that's going to upload the attachment, and my transformer's red and it's got a little bit of hail damage. So once I'm finished with this, I'm going to complete the inspection. And in this case, there were a couple of things that I answered where there was a problem. I had some unsatisfactory results. I've got an oil leak I need to take care of. I've got a cracked bushing that I need to take care of, things like that. So I'm going to use this Batch Actions button down here, and it's going to give me an option to well, if I can get to it. I can't get to. So I'm not able to see it on my screen based on the resolution with the video, but normally what I would have here is a batch action and an opportunity to create work orders. Instead, I can do it here under this individual take action, and I've got to create work orders for items that require attention. And this is going to generate follow-up work orders. So I've created work order 2055, task 10, to address my cracked bushings. And then I can do the same thing for each of these individually. If I could get to that batch action button down here that I'm not quite able to see, then I would be able to just do that in one step. I wouldn't have to do them individually like this. But essentially what that's done is it's gone through and it's created work orders based on the unsatisfactory conditions that I found or the discrepancies in my inspection if I was out and found anything that wasn't quite right and needed follow-up work on my asset. Now, if I look at any of these assets and view their work order details back here in Maximo, I will see that I've got the inspection work orders, but then I've also got the follow-up work orders here that are waiting my approval, and I've got a link to my inspection results if I needed to get back to those. So that's an example of an inspection that might involve multiple assets of different types and classes with different forms and different questions and things that I would be capturing about each of those, where I've got the ability to gather that information and then generate the follow-up work orders to go out and effect any repairs that I might need to do related to that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lonnie, and she's got yet another example of how we might make use of these inspection forms.
So another method of creating an inspection sort of on an ad hoc basis is just in the inspection application work center, which is just called conduct an inspection. There's actually another option here where you can just start an inspection using the unscheduled inspection button. So then the very first thing that Maximo wants to know is what asset or location are you trying to inspect. So I would choose the asset button because I'm going to create a vehicle damage report. So my vehicle asset number is 5802. If I'd had, the vehicle number, I could have entered that in my search. And sure enough, it's a four-door sedan that I want to report some damage to. So here is my asset, and now Maximo wants to know, well, what form are you wanting to use for this vehicle? Because it could be a regular, any kind of an inspection. So I would like to file a damage report for my four-door sedan. So I just I get my damage report ready, and notice here I have a very, very specific instruction about this report. All damage to vehicles that's discovered while in your possession must be reported. Please fill out the form with the best information you have. Thank you. So now I'm going to go ahead and start my damage report. So notice that this is less about inspections and more about reporting. So you're actually using the work center inspection to report something that happened, like an incident, and answer the questions that are required. So what date did the incident occur? What time did the incident occur? These are the calendar controls that are available in Maximo. And I'm just selecting those. What caused the damage? This is a multiple choice. I need to select what caused it, and I'm going to select weather event. Amy's already stolen my thunder because she showed my hail-damaged vehicle, but that's okay. If it's an accident, where did the accident occur? And this is a text entry, and since it wasn't an accident, I can just say not applicable. What city or county did it happen in? And I can put Utica. And then if it's on private property, put the name of the owner or the business name. So these are sort of the things that your risk management organization would want information on in order to track any kind of damages or things that might happen. Was a police report filed? It's no, because it was a weather event. And if there's a police department name. So these are just examples of questions that you might have on a form like this. Any injuries? And any injured persons? And any witnesses? The damage documentation section is asking me what part and wants me to describe in detail. So the hood, the roof, and trunk were the damaged areas. Hail damage in thunderstorm. As much information as I can put, it's a long description style field. Is the vehicle still drivable? Yes. Was it towed? No. And then if they're, just continuing on with the typical questions that you would have. And yes, we did take photos. And I'm going to go ahead and add my hail picture again because my little car is all beat up from the hail. And now I can complete my inspection. So this is just an example of a way to use the Inspection Work Center that isn't necessarily related to, operating assets. It could be actually reporting of something and answering just questions that need to be filled out. And I don't have any back action, so I can exit. And I think we have another poll question, Alex.
So we're just going to switch screens real quick. So as we talk about inspections, one of the key questions we had for you is, how is your organization recording inspection data? Are you still using hard copies? Are you using Excel? Are you using Maximo? Third-party tools? You may or may not know. Just how are you recording? Because that's a key part of the inspection and the reporting. So we'd love to hear from you. So you should have received the poll. If you could take a minute to answer it. And when we're done, if the screen doesn't close, just exit out. So good. Looks like lots of paper, which we expected. We see a few Maximo. We'll give it just another minute to populate. Great. Thank you. We appreciate that you all took the time to join us. So Lonnie, let's go ahead and turn it back over to you. I think you had another demo for us. And by the way, I have to say, Amy and Lonnie, you're doing a great job. I think they'd mentioned that they are off-site in the midst of a training classroom, so we really appreciate them joining us.
Yes, and we appreciate our studio audience.
All right, so based on those survey results, it looks like a lot of paper forms, which as Alex said, we expected that, and quite a few folks in Maximo, which if you're using version 7.6 of Maximo, you might already be doing some of the inspection forms. If you aren't on 7.6 or you haven't quite gotten to the work centers yet, then a lot of this data was historically captured using classifications and attributes or using extra fields on your work order or asset records, or maybe using the meters and the monitoring points. So we've got a couple of slides we're going to show here, and then Lonnie's going to do a live demo to show you just how easy it is to build these forms. I mean, what we've shown is 3 very different use cases, but there's a form builder tool that allows you to just build forms to your heart's content with whatever kind of information that you might want.
So the basis of the inspection form is also located in the Work Center. It's called the Inspection Form Library. And so what happens here is all the forms that are built in the system are listed so that you have the ability to revise them and edit them as needed for purposes of capturing either more information or more clearer information. So you do have a revision history on them. You can inactivate them. As you can see, some of the ones in the library in this slide are active and inactive, and some of them are. Go into Live Maximo again, and you'll see my inspection form library. And this is where it all starts. So the idea around building the forms is that you can group your questions and responses. You can give instructions similar to what you saw on my damage report. You can then also require fields, and you can set your form to have your follow-up actions. So by selecting on Create a Form, I start out with a very simple interface here. I'm going to name my form. So for purposes of brevity and entertainment, since it's, we're talking about software here, I'm going to just call this a form an interview form. and you can give the form a category. So if we want to categorize our form library, you can organize it in that way. So I'm just going to call this an audit for good purposes. Here's where I can set my instructions. Notice there's just a whole notepad here worth of information that I can give instructions on the form to help people know what the purpose of it is and how to utilize it. And all of a sudden now I have a blank slate and I can add a question, my very first question. So the pieces that are important to a form builder is what kind of questions can I ask? So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that there are these kinds of questions that I can get certain kinds of responses. My question is just a text. So I can type in, what is your favorite, what is your favorite color is the question, as simple as that. And I can ask it to be a choice. So my selectable response, I select it on the left, it fills it in on the right, and I enter my possible answers. So, enter blue, red, I can add some more options, make this one purple. So, and each one of the answers has additional message that you can give instructions. So if it's blue, what dark or light or something along that line, you can actually give them some additional. On the right-hand side, notice there are, by each answer that you are programming, you're asking, Maximo's asking you, do you want to require action if this question is answered yes, or if this selection is chosen? So basically, this is where you toggle on that follow-up action to create a follow-up work order or whatever the action might be. Once you add that question, you just keep adding questions of similar nature. We can do a text entry, which is, you saw some of those in the other. What is your favorite pizza topping? Right, and then just type it in, right? You just enter a description. Here's where you would set it if you wanted it to be required. You would toggle that on so they couldn't complete until it was done. A couple other features that I want to show you is that once you've got your questions listed here, you notice they automatically get numbered, and you have the ability to edit them, open that question again, and add more things to it. You can trash that question if you're no longer happy with it. Remember, we're still building and creating here. And it indicates here whether there's any question, if that question is required. So they have a lot of tools here to allow you. If you had a set of questions here like you may have seen in the inspection forms earlier, I can select them with the checkbox over here and create a group. So this is, I can just group different like questions together. So I can call that group personal preferences, my color and my pizza toppings. And then I can continue to add questions and group them as I need to. When the form is ready to save, then I have it in my form list. It shows it in a draft state. I can trash the whole thing here, edit it some more. I can even preview it using this button here with the little eye. The preview brings up the actual inspection as though I was going to complete it, just showing the layout and the style of the questions, how it looks on the screen, how it flows on the screen. It gives you a chance to experience it, without actually filling one out, you might say. It's kind of a trial. Once I want that form to be available in the system to add to and to create inspections, I just make the inspection active, and now that form can be used by anyone. My revision process is just as simple. Once I create a revision of this, I still have an active form out there that can continue to be used by anyone who needs, but while I'm revising it, I can enter a reason, and I can continue to edit and enhance that form, and then make the new one active when I'm ready. One other thing about the form, there is a settings wheel here. This is where what Amy was describing earlier. When she created her follow-up work orders, that we have an automation script, and you can create automation scripts for whatever actions. This is the create follow-up work order automation script. So I can add that to my form here. This is pending revision, so I can't, but you would select it so they would become available during the follow-up actions. This is also where you would turn on your audio enabled. So if you need to do voice to text, or if you need the to be read out loud by the computer, you can enable the audio to be read, the questions to be read, and also the text input, audio text input.
So one thing to note with those follow-up actions being controlled through an automation script, that gives you full flexibility as a configuration and without a customization to have different types of actions that take place. So creating work orders, changing statuses of assets, different things like that can be done. And then you can also use that to set different values on the created record. So maybe for a certain inspection form, my follow-up work order is also going to include setting a priority or a work type or something along those lines. So that automation script capability gives you a lot of flexibility in what your follow-up action is going to look like. So that's the simplicity of just generating the forms themselves. Question to ask before we talk about what you do with all this data now that you've got it?
Yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Lonnie. So yes, now that you are using inspections, or if you're using inspections, what do you do with the data once you capture it? Are you just storing it as hard or digital copies? Are you reporting it to a regulatory agency? Are you using it to drive maintenance, or maybe you're not sure? So you should have just received the survey, and again, we'd like to know what you're doing with the inspection data once it's captured, if you know. Great. So real mix across the board of how it's being used. Love that the majority is using their data to drive maintenance. We'll give it just couple more seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and close the survey. All right. Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
Back to you.
Okay. So we've got a lot of data that we're collecting, and as is the case with Maximo, data in doesn't necessarily mean information out unless you put in place the right processes and reporting and tools to make that happen. So a little bit ago, we looked at the ability to just view the work details, and that inspections is one of the tabs on your work details screen now, so you can view historic work details, and we'll look at that live in just a minute. You can also, through the relationships of the database, query from assets or work orders back into that inspection data. There's a business analyst work center that uses the inspections object that allows you to generate some reports or CSV files off of that. And then, of course, if you have a subscription to Watson Analytics, then you've got the ability to export that data and put it in there. So we're going to look real quick at the Maximo side of that. So I'm going to share the screen again here. So as that screen is coming up, first off, again, is the view work details. What that allows me to do is go to an asset or location record that I know has been in a location or asset. I can then view any inspection history that I've got for that. So if I put in one of my breakers here that I was looking at earlier in my substation inspection, I've got the ability here on my view to view those work details. And on the inspections tab here, I can see all of my inspection history about that. So I've got 3 completed inspections, 1 that's in progress. And from here, I can go to conduct an inspection and view that inspection form in its entirety with all of the questions answered that I might have collected when I was doing the inspection. So this gives me immediate access to those historical inspection results where I can look and see what type of information I collected. Another feature you can do here, because sometimes you don't want to look at this as at a inspection by inspection level. Maybe I need to get a report of all of my assets that had cracked bushings or had some sort of unsatisfactory result. And in doing that, I want to look across a broader than a one asset by one asset situation. So here I've modified my advanced search capabilities. And in my advanced search, what I've got is the ability to pick a specific question, and from that, find how many assets were inspected that had that particular result. So I'm searching for my, actually I want to do the bushings. So I want to know how my bushings came out, and I want to know when they came back as cracked. I can put a date range on that, so if I only want the ones that have taken place this year or this quarter, I can pull that out. And then I can do a find, and what that's going to bring me back is a list of assets that have been inspected historically that had that particular answer to that question. So that gives me the ability to go in and search for specific conditions or things, discrepancies or things that came out of my inspection data. If you're tied into GIS and a spatial application, then I might take that list of assets and immediately go over to my map and see where those are located. Maybe I'm doing line patrols or something like that, and I want to know all of my structures out in my system that had woodpecker holes of a certain size or something along those lines. So once you get that list of assets, then that opens you up to be able to do whatever you might do with those assets within Maximo, with your mapping, creating work packages, changing statuses, different things like that. So a lot of opportunities there for that type of activity. I had mentioned earlier there's also the ability to use this as a data set. So I'm going to go back to my Inspection Work Center, and in that I've got my data set library over here. And I've added, for my substation inspections, I've added a data set here. I've got edit and delete capabilities. I've also then got download capabilities. So if I just download that CSV file right out of my data set, then I can open that up. And what I'm going to see then is just the raw inspection data, which I can then upload to any sort of reporting capability. I can do some pivot tables or graphing in Excel. I can just take that raw data and manipulate it, not manipulate it because you wouldn't want to change your inspection history, but you could query and sort and filter and graph and do things like that on it, as well as upload it to an analytics style tool if you needed to. So really the value of these inspections, beyond just the ease of use and the mobility component and getting rid of paper in the field and having those lengthy file cabinets that often line rooms with historical data that nobody really goes back and looks for, all of this becomes electronically stored with the ability to access it from a couple of different perspectives to do your reporting and querying and using that to drive your maintenance programs and other types of activities. How do I stop the screen share? So I'm going to cut back over to the slides then now and talk a little bit about doing with these inspections and kind of what that roadmap is looking like. So as many of you probably know that have been using Maximo 7.6, the inspections came out with ad hoc inspections about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago with version 7.608. IBM's making pretty significant investments in the work center capabilities overall. as a mobility tool with the other work centers that are available around work execution and different things like that. So what started off as just a pretty simple inspection form and ad hoc inspections has morphed over time with the addition of being able to tie your inspections to your work, for using work orders to plan those inspections, being able to do the multiple inspection reports, the follow-up actions, things like that we've been showing. More recently, then, there's the capability to do conditional questions and responses. So now we didn't demonstrate it today, but now you have the ability to, if somebody answers a question in a certain way, then maybe the next question changes based on that prior answer. So, if I'm doing the vehicle damage report and one of the questions is if it's an accident report and one of the questions is, are there injuries? Maybe that yes to an injury brings up a whole new set of questions that I wouldn't even see if my answer to that first one was no. So the conditional questions really do add to the power of the form and being able to tweak it to the specifics of the situation that you might be looking at. You can also start to do predefined text responses and make those even more refined and limit even more the amount of entry that a field user has to do, because we want to make this quick and easy, and thinking they're on a mobile device of some sort, being able to just select answers and not have to type things in is a big bonus. So coming out again later this year, the conditional questions, GIS support. So for anybody who's seen the Map Work Center and in its current state, then that will start to be integrated in with the inspections as well. And then also more access to Maximo information for the inspector. So as I'm doing that inspection, maybe I want to look at previous work history or open work orders or prior readings. Maybe my current reading seems a little out of whack, might be off, but I want to look and see what was it last month, because maybe that will tell me whether or not this current reading is really all that far off. Moving forward into the future, the Work Center UI is undergoing some fairly substantial framework changes as we speak, and added in with that would then become the ability to configure that. So right now, the configuration of inspections is really just in the form development and being able to control, as Lonnie showed, the grouping and the style of questions and the instructions and responses and things. There's not a lot of UI control there, but they are looking to add that with a future version of the work centers to give you the ability to configure those. And that's really going to be a game changer, I think, for not only the inspection work center, but all of the work centers. They're also looking to make it a little more responsive for small devices. So if you're doing these inspections on a phone versus an iPad, that you've still got good screen display there. And then another future intent is offline support for inspections. So right now the work centers are an online tool, so you do have to have connectivity, which for most of us isn't typically a problem. There's a lot of good cell phone coverage across the way, and there's Wi-Fi hotspots in most of our workplaces now. So until you get into some of the inner plant environments or places where there's not a good opportunity for connectivity, most of the time being in an online mode is not a terrible thing, but there is still the need for that offline support, and that is on the roadmap. Now, I do have to state there's a disclaimer there at the bottom under the please note that this is IBM's roadmap, so nothing is promised until it's available, but do know that they're working on it. Lonnie and I both sit on a business partner group to work with IBM directly and provide feedback and input into the Work Center configurations and development, and we're very excited about some of the things that we see coming. Just Work Centers overall, real quick, for those of you that may not be too familiar with them, and just that general roadmap, the configuration tools, again, is something that is on its way here, hopefully very, very soon. We've talked a lot about inspections today, so the cascading Q&A and the multi-selection response, and then again the offline support eventually. there are also a lot of roadmap capabilities coming for service requests with the ability to do guest users. So maybe not everybody has a login to your Maximo, so you might have service requests that are coming in from guest users, and then also some map capability there, SR coordination. The supply chain will be a completely new work center. Excited about that one coming. The ability to do inventory, issues and transfers, picking and staging, more improvements to the work management. We've seen that develop over time all along, and then the change from Watson Analytics to Cognos workboards and APAs. So very exciting stuff on the way from IBM. So we are looking forward to getting accustomed to that and using that with our clients to put in place great solutions to help make jobs easier and work more efficient and effective. So that's the end of our content. With that, I'm going to flip over and start looking at some of the questions that you all have been asking as we've been talking and see what we can answer along those lines. So the first one here, if you have to have a work center, and if so, how do you set it up to also see assets? Inspections are definitely part of the work center tools. Those are deployed automatically within Maximo 7.6, so it's not a separate install. It's part of your Maximo licensing and part of what's available to you. So no additional entitlements or things like that. You would just need your normal Maximo capabilities, whether it's as express users or limited users, et cetera. So that actually kind of covers several of the questions as far as whether or not it's out of the box. And we've talked a little bit about the configuration capabilities and that those are coming. So another question here that we had is going back and showing the work orders that were created from the inspection and wanting to see what the descriptions were. Lonnie, do you want to talk a little bit about the descriptions that were created on those batch actions and how we might use automation scripts to manage and create better descriptions?
Sure. So the follow-up work orders that Amy created from her substation breaker and transformer inspections are generated, and the description of the work order brings the question to the description, and it'll say the answer to the question. For example, cracked, and it'll say cracked, and it'll show that the breaker, the name of the question name, and then the answer to the question. So basically it's saying this work order was created because the answer to a certain inspection question was a certain way. So yes, to Amy's point, the automation script, because it has so much flexibility, can create a description of the work order based on what you tell it. So it could pull the name of the inspection number. It could pull in the name of the asset number, whatever, into the description, just based on data from that inspection.
Thank you. All right. Another question here is whether or not you can add labor time to inspections, and not the inspection itself, but if your inspection is tied to a work order, then obviously you can report time to the work order. So if you do need to record inspection time, that would be the route to go, would be to use either a PM generation or just create an ad hoc inspection that's tied to a work order, and then you can charge time to that work order. So another question we have here is, does the inspection form tie into an actual meter for the asset? So I'm going to have Lonnie talk about that a little bit. That was one of the options when she was going through the form design.
Correct. So when you design the form, one of the type of responses you can request from the user is a meter reading. And by adding an asset meter reading or location meter reading to the form, you tell the inspection form you want to take the reading on a certain meter. So when that inspection is filled out and they get to that question, it's going to say enter the meter reading. And sure enough, they'll get to enter the reading, and when that inspection is complete, that meter reading is posted back to the asset that is the subject of that inspection. So back to that asset, you can look at manage meter reading history and see the reading that was entered from the inspection activity.
All right, another question we had, actually a couple are related to looking at charts for the readings, as Lonnie was just talking about, or just in the inspection information in general. And yes, you can look at charts for a single asset, for multiple assets. That's really dependent upon your reporting tools. There's not, you've got the Work Center Business Analyst capability to download data. All of the inspection data is stored in your database. So you can certainly get to that information through your BERT and Cognos reporting tools. You could output it to a CSV and upload to another reporting tool like a Cognos dashboard or something along those lines. So really what you do with the data, how you chart it, how you look at it is up to you and what makes the most sense. Certain types of inspection data will lead well to charts and trending and things like that. Others may need a different style of reporting and output. So again, as the forms are very flexible and you can tailor them to pretty much any type of inspection activity you might be doing, the reporting on the backside of the inspection is equally flexible in that once you have all of this information as a series of ones and zeros in your database, the sky is the limit in how you might report on it. All right, I think we've got time for maybe one last question, and we'll go with, there's a question about whether or not the inspections can utilize QR code scannings and readings on assets. That one is really dependent on how you set up the QR codes and what they would be doing. So embedded within a QR code would be some sort of a URL and a responding action. So maybe that QR code directs you to the URL to create an unscheduled inspection on a particular asset. Again, that's kind of configurable and tailorable to the needs of what you've got going on. So lots of options. Again, we're very excited about the capabilities that IBM is delivering with this and their continued investment in this platform, and look forward to exploring more opportunities to put these to work for folks. Alex, do you want to wrap up?
Great, Amy, Lonnie, that was fantastic content. We really appreciate it. And just to clarify, I think I saw a couple questions about this, about what version of Maximo is best compatible for inspections and work orders.
So 7.608 would be your minimum, really, but at this point, we would probably pretty highly recommend 7.6.1 just because of the more recent improvements that have come out. That would be the best place to start.
Great. Well, again, audience, we thank you so much for joining us today. If there were any questions that you didn't have a chance to get answered during the presentation, you'll have a quick post-event survey. We'd love to hear from you. Amy, Lonnie, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and great content with us, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.